Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and in today's video, we'll be taking a look at monks and some of the updates that I've gotten in the recent build. We'll also in this video be referencing a website called Peak of Serenity, which deals with class changes. This Peak of Serenity is basically similar to Rogue Ravenhold website, where it's basically players that either through Discords or through websites talk about the specific changes to classes, and monk being one of those classes that I just picked up at the very end of BFA. This is the one spec I have the least amount of experience with as a melee or a DPS going from BFA. Going into Shadowlands, I'm actually very excited to play a monk, but there are a lot of things for me that I just simply was not aware of, and with my channel, especially with Shadowlands being primarily focused on trying to make classes as best as I can, I will be using the website, which I'll have linked down below, for some reference from players that actually play monks in terms of what they think about these changes. I will still give you guys my thoughts, but I am going to kind of take from the experience of players that actually play this spec regularly and try to kind of at least let you guys know how they feel about these recent updates. So let's talk about some of the changes that monks have gotten recently, as this is a class that I'm actually super excited to play going into Shadowlands. I am very excited to see where it's going to go, how it's going to check out, how it's going to play out. But there's always that a little bit of this uncertainty, especially with monks, because if you ask anybody around, I think there's a lot of people that are excited to play rogues, mages, warlocks, hunters as primary DPS. There's even some people that want to play Boomy or Feral, and Shadow Priest, of course. By itself, I feel like there's going to be some players that are not going to be looking just for a priest, but rather a Shadow Priest, somebody who's really good at that one spec of that one specific class. And while monks do bring a specific debuff to enemies, which is Mystic Touch, when they do physical damage to enemies, they take 5% more physical damage. That buff is shared between Windwalker, Healer, Mistweaver, and Tank Brewmaster. So technically, as a monk, you could play any spec, and generally players, when they look for a monk player, they look for a monk player, someone who can play all those roles, at least somewhat decently. But not a lot of people really look for a Windwalker in particular. And I'm really hoping that Blizzard is at least making changes in order to get monks to that state where people want a Windwalker. Not just in PvP, but like in dungeons and raids, they would love a Windwalker because there's something they can bring and they can at least be somewhat competitive and viable. So let's take a look at what Blizzard changes. First change is Energizing Elixir has been removed off of the GCD. I'm not that great at monk, but I'll try to show you kind of how I would use Energizing Elixir. There's probably better ways to optimize it because it does give you energy over 75 energy over 5 seconds and gives you chi immediately. So it gives you a lot of setup in order to go into burst. With the monks playing as they are, normally you will play Fist of Fury or Fist of the White Tiger. Normally as a talent because this gives you mechanical advantage, with your mastery being where you can't repeat abilities all the time. Let's say you go for Tiger Palm, but you need more chi and you want to go for another Tiger Palm. You can go for Fist of the White Tiger, Tiger Palm, 5 chi in the opener. You can really get you burst out at the very beginning with a big Fist of Fury, a big Rising Sun kick into a Whirling Dragon Punch, and get all your damage out. Then there's Ascension, which gives you more energy to generate chi from, and extra chi that you can store up if you want to. So the opener could be something like Tiger Palm into Chi Wave into Tiger Palm, and then you can really get your bursts rolling. So Energizing Elixir being on GCD just gave you way too much energy, and it was just kind of a waste. And let me try to see if I can actually use it in my rotation here. Again, not a monk main by any measure, but I'll try my very hardest here if I can. Try to see if I can maybe get it to do some big setups. I probably should have went for Bone Dust Brie here as well. Let's try to see if we can get... That's a lot of energy we're generating. Maybe I'm over generating energy, or at least the amount I'm generating right now. But at least it's better than where what I did last time, because last time the damage definitely was not the same. I'm able to at least maintain a 3k DPS burst or so. Maybe it might have gotten to 4k at some point. But that felt pretty good. If this ability was on GCD, that would feel kind of miserable. Energizing Elixir, for the Peak of Serenity, they mentioned that it might actually be decent for AoE, so that could be really good. Or monks might be able to use this commonly in AoE or single target. The energy regen, I think, is going to be really good. I do wonder if you'll end up using this in your opener to give you the chi, and then you'll utilize the energy regen kind of when your Xuen is down, or will you be using this when you're low on energy? So I do wonder what there is. Next change is Spinning Crane Kick's damage now can be increased up to 60%. So Spinning Crane Kick, if I can find it, which I think is just a base class ability, Spinning Crane Kick damage is increased by 10% for each unique target you've struck in the last 15 seconds with Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, or Rising Sun Kick. So what I could do is I could tag these two, port, tag the enemies, and I can make my spin and crank kick do even more damage. So it has to be jabs or kicks. And port into jabs and kicks. Drag and kick over, roll, jab, and kick. So you could actually get it to do 6 times more damage, which will be a little bit better when it comes to AoE situations. So this is going to be just a slight damage increase for spin and crank kick if you are going to be doing mythic pluses, doing AoE. With so many classes getting a cap on their AoE, when monks being also another one of those classes with a cap to the AoE, spin and crank kick is going to now do a little bit more damage and will provide monks a little bit more of an oomph when it comes to the output that you have. Another change that I actually think is kind of weird, but I didn't realize how nice it was for monks, is Xuen. So haste now affects periodic damage of crackling tiger lightning. So it's not crackling jade lightning, crackling tiger lightning. So when you send your Xuen, you're just going to do all the damage with his crackling tiger lightning. So this apparently had no effect from haste, as it is like channeled ability or kind of like a periodic ability from Xuen. So now when you have haste, like Bloodlust for example, your crackling tiger lightning from Xuen will happen more often. So your Xuen will do more damage during Bloodlust. Monks don't really have a lot of synergy with haste. Maybe Mistweaver does, maybe Brewmaster to some extent, but Windwalker generally it is said crit, master versatility, and at some point just giga stack as much versa as you can. Haste affecting your crackling Xuen isn't going to be all that insane, and it's probably not going to make it best, at least not from what Peak of Serenity suggests, but at least it's something. I think during Bloodlust, your Xuen is actually going to be a very, very high damage cooldown. Monks generally don't really scale super well with haste, so haste actually being kind of useful in some way or another, I think is a good change. Now we're going to get on the monk that I have right here for testing with the Covenants, as there are a couple things I do want to test with Covenant abilities. But there's a couple of Covenant abilities that have been adjusted for monks. First one is going to be with the Kyrian. So Weapons of Order is getting changed. For the next 30 seconds, the ability reads right now, for the next 30 seconds, your mastery is increased by 13%. Additionally, Rising Sun Kick reduces your chi cost by 1 for 5 seconds. And Blackout Kick reduces cooldown of affected abilities by an additional 1 second. So with Weapons of Order, using Blackout Kick will be not only free because Rising Sun Kick will reduce all the chi abilities, but also your Blackout Kick will let you use more Fist of Furies and more of Rising Sun Kicks. So let me kind of see what's it like to play with this ability. We're going to go for a kick here. I guess I should really go for a Fist of Fury. Maybe I can go for Rising Sun Kick is down, which kind of sucks. So I'm going to Fist of kick. Let's go for a little bit of AoE. We are getting Rising Sun Kicks back a little bit quicker into another Fist of Fury. We get this buff for quite a while. This is almost like the Monk's what's the best way to put it? It's almost like the Monk's Metamorphosis or the Monk's Incarnation. Yeah, wow, this is actually kind of smooth. And does give you a little bit more Fist of Furies in a way. It definitely gives you a lot more Blackout Kicks because you're kind of focusing on that a lot, but it does give you a little bit of smooth rotation. If I was better at Monk, I feel like I could probably optimize this a lot better, because normally what you would want to do here is maintain the buff from Rising Sun Kick. There were a few seconds where I didn't maintain it the whole time. Actually, can I see exactly the aura? Weapons of Order. Yeah, so I could probably maintain that a little bit better because I had Weapons of the Order for 30 seconds. I probably can pop Weapons of Order into a Weapons of Order kick ability immediately and maintain those together. So if I was a little bit better at Monk and more prepared, you probably could get a bit of value out of it. I'm hoping this makes the ability a little bit better compared to how the Kyrian ability was. But, you know, there's always the event tier ability for the enemies that will kind of do, or the monks that will kind of do everything for you. So Kyrians have quite a bit to compete against. Another Covenant that has quite a bit to compete against are the Fae, because their ability has been something monks have actually been trying out quite a lot from any raid testing that I've seen. But I don't think it's ever actually been all that good. So Phelan Stop will now deal nature damage in front of the monk, or healing if you're a Mistweaver, when cast, and will continue to deal additional damage to targets caught in the Fey lines. If you don't know what the Fey lines look like, oh, I got his aggro, that's not good. So you kind of stomp on the ground and you make these lines that kind of resemble a tree. And what's cool about this ability too is it will do a bunch of damage to enemies for 30 seconds. Wow, it exposes the Fey line for 30 seconds. So basically, while enemies stand there, they'll just take constant damage. That's different. And restores health to 5 nearby allies. So this will do damage to enemies and will heal allies that stand in it. 5 nearby allies. Up to 5 enemies caught in the phalanx suffer additional damage. The abilities have a 6% chance of resetting the cooldown of phalanx stomps. So the idea is you can kind of like have multiple of these phalanx stomps. So let me use this. I got the phalanx stomp. It made a random positional. How much damage did it do? Actually, I really should try to see if I can reset. And let's go back in. I kind of want to see the damage of this thing. I'm on a character that doesn't really have a lot of gear, but my ability isn't also going to scale poorly without having a lot of gear. So let's just kind of try to put everything together and see just how much damage phalanx stomp and the actual damage over time does. So this looks like the actual hit itself. This is the one where it hits the train dummy. And this is the one that ticks down over time as a dot. So together, I mean, that could be quite a lot of damage. Let's try this out. I feel like Xuen might end up doing a bit of extra damage on the side, which is something I might not be able to do about. We'll try to mostly make it a damage to single target, but I'm pretty sure this target is also going to get clipped a little. Not a lot I can really do. Phalanx Stomp reset, which is nice. This is an ability that can be weaved into your mastery, which I do kind of like. I don't really get to play with this one a lot. I usually just go Venthyr as a monk, because it's literally what everybody plays. We got a reset into a Phalanx, into a little bit of damage. And it looks like the Phalanx can actually like really curve. I guess if it's about to hit a wall, it's really going to try to curve outwards. I wonder if this guy's going to affect it. It doesn't look like he's taking extra damage. Okay, so that was a little bit over 2 minutes. I think it actually maybe 3 minutes. Yeah, about 3. So overall, how did it do? So there's a bit of cleave, for certain. There's definitely a little bit of cleave in terms of dummies being next to each other. And there's no way I'm hitting this guy because he's going to just hit me back. But when it comes to talking about like the damage output of this, cleave included, because I do get quite a bit of cleave from it. Not a lot I can really do. Phalanx Stomp did mostly single target damage with 6.4 the actual stomp itself by the looks of it, and this is the dot since it is much smaller number. So together it's doing about 8%, 9% ish of damage, close to 10%, which as a covenant ability compared to some of the other classes, 10% of your damage is really not that bad. There were some caveats to it because you only can reset it if you're standing on a phalanx. So let's say if the tank has the boss in an area, you're like, okay, we'll keep the bosses there. You'll stomp and you'll hopefully stand on the line. And then let's say the tank gotta drag the boss for mechanics. You're like, but my fail. I mean, I guess you could maybe hit the boss with a Jade Lightning while you're standing on the phalanx and hope it resets. But if you gotta walk out of it, that's going to be a bit of a bummer because you don't get the value. I don't know how significant that part is going to be. Maybe it still will be fine for a Covenant ability. But now this ability will do a bit of extra damage and deal additional damage to the enemies in line. This is going to be like a Frost Mage Blizzard effect all over, where it's like, please don't drag enemies out of a blizzard. Please don't drag them out of a blizzard. Please don't. So I wonder if monks will have some kind of fights with tanks on that regard. But that is an update to both the Weapons of Order as well as Phalanx Stomp. I think that is still quite a lot to compete with against the Venthyr because they were looking really good for monks. I did play around with the Bone Dust Brew. I don't know which one of these is good, and the website Serenity says they don't really know which one is going to be insanely strong, but I've seen a lot of monks try the Venthyr one and get a lot of value out of it, at least in PvP. So if they're getting a lot of value out of it in PvP, I wouldn't be surprised if monks, based on that knowledge, would kind of lean towards Venthyr to try to be good in PvE, since this one at least has proven itself, while the other ones are still kind of up in the air. But I do wonder in the comments if you guys are looking at the Kyrian from these changes, or maybe looking at the Fae with some of these updates. Finally, we'll be talking about bug fixes, because Monk is the class that has the most amount of bugs, literally the most amount of bugs I think I've ever seen in Shadowlands so far. Even though they're the class that's not really getting too many updates. Maybe there's some of the bugs that have been there from previous expansions that are finally getting fixed, or maybe old school bugs that were there at some point that are rearing their head. But like, I don't think there's a single class that has more. I could be wrong. Let me know in the comments. But Rising Sun Kick as an ability and Whirling Dragon Punch finally contribute to Xuen, because Xuen will use Empower Tiger Lightning based on certain abilities to attack every enemy near you. So, yeah, Xuen kind of was a big cooldown for you, and having your Whirling Dragon Punch, which is a must-have talent in most cases, and Rising Sun Kick, which is one of your harder hitting abilities, besides, you know, Fist of Fury, but one of the bigger ones, not contribute to Xuen, the Tiger Lightning empowered version was kind of lots of missed opportunity. It's a pretty big loss of damage. Also, Rising Sun Kick now has a rank 2, where the damage of this ability will be increased by 70%. So that should be in the game already. Now that you can actually see the rank 2 when you mouse over the ability, which I think it would be cool if they added like a rank 2 just as a passive where I could just kind of mouse over, where this ability just simply does 20% more damage, so you can track all these passives a little bit easier. But then there's also still work in progress, like question of two-hand or dual wield. As you will know, monks have in Shadowlands recently got an update to be able to play with a two-hand weapon like a polearm, or be able to play with one-handers. And there's a bit of concerns on the balancing of it all. Technically, there is a difference between damage for monks with a polearm, like a two-hander, or with two one-handers, like let's say fist weapons or maces. So when you have one weapon, the polearm, a two-hander, your punches actually do more damage. So your tiger palm will do more damage, and your Fist of Fury actually does slightly more damage, very slightly. Your Whirling Dragon Punch will also do slightly more damage, and it seems that every other ability like that does nature damage also does slightly more damage with a polearm, slightly. But with the dual wield, your kicks do more damage, like Spinning Crane Kick, your Rising Sun Kick, your Blackout Kick. But yeah, it's a very, very little notice. It's not going to be like Frost Death Knight that has, you know, dual wield or two-hand, where with two-hand you have big obliterates, while with two-hand you get the bonus of the extra frost damage on the enemy, which lets you play certain talents. So for monks, I think that alone isn't going to change it that much. But there is advantages in having dual wield in one hand, very similar to that of a Death Knight. With Death Knight, if you were to play the Obliterate playstyle with a big two-hander, you could only use one rune, before the updates that they had for Obliterate. With monks, that's not the case. Monks don't have any advantage, any specific damage increases, whether you use a two-hand polearm, or staff, or I guess a... Can they use? I guess spear is a polearm. So I guess a two-hand staff or a two-hand polearm, that's agility. They don't get any kind of like certain abilities do X amount of extra damage if you have a polearm equipped or two-hander equipped. So for monks, it's comes down to like a Death Knight thing, where with two weapons you have two enchants. And there's certain enchants in the game that are really, really strong. Certain enchants that will do more AoE damage, because with two weapons each enchant, that's more chances for those enchants to proc. I gave it a little bit more time while doing this video to think about the whole dilemma of two enchants versus one enchant, and I can't really come up with a good idea of how Blizzard should solve it. But I would love for Blizzard to find some sort of a balance, because as a Windwalker, I would love to use some of my Brewmaster Legion weapons or even Mystery weapons instead of always having to play dual wield. I think it will look really, really cool. These weapons are awesome, and I don't really play Brewmaster or Mystery with that much, but this will give you more of a reason, just for the aesthetical choice. I feel like there's quite a bit of this expansion that I do end up valuing aesthetically. So whatever Blizzard ends up doing for the updates, or however they implement the fix, hopefully it'll be happy with the community of monks, but also they'll find a middle ground where you might even be able to use Brewmaster weapon for Transmog without having the biggest damage loss. I know that Blizzard is doing a lot of ambitious things, and giving players more choices in which weapons they want to use also just adds more to the headache of trying to balance things. Anybody remember how long it took for Frost Death Knights to be able to get a proper two-hand back in the game, and the balancing it took? Well, I do believe the Blizzard might be able to do it, and just for the aesthetical choice, I really do hope they will find a way to make the two-handed polearms relevant in some way for Windwalker monks. They also talked about in the blue post about balancing Storm Earth and Fire, so hopefully they'll end up balancing that out as well, as this ability just simply gives so many monks so much trouble. But what would you replace Storm Earth and Fire with if, let's say, because some monks have asked for replacement for Storm Earth and Fire? Or maybe let Storm Earth and Fire be like your AoE ability, where you can split off with your images for AoE purposes, but not have like the big main button cooldown. I do wonder what Blizzard will end up doing with it in the future. I do wonder if maybe they'll go back to like what Serenity was back in Legion, where monks would start using Serenity and just have like the big burst wombo combo during Serenity windows. I do wonder if that's kind of the direction maybe they could go, and just swap out Serenity and Storm Earth and Fire, and just kind of combine Storm Earth and Fire maybe with Spiritual Focus or something like that. But anyway, thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about some of the updates that monks have gotten recently? Does this get you maybe excited to play Monk with any of the updates they've gotten at all? Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.